What's good, everybody? Welcome to Ho Views. Thank you for clicking that thumbnail. Today, we're going to be talking about Mr. and Mrs. Smith on Prime Video. So on the thumbnail, you see DEI spies, and that means I'm going to have to talk about what that actually means in my experience with that phrase and how I come up with that. And we're going to have to start talking about other people's commentary on this show. The reviews for this show was kind of middling. I saw a lot of 8s and 6s on different sites like Collider or IGN, and just different little outlets, whether I see it on YouTube or I see it on Instagram, I see it on Twitter. And I'm a person who always go to comment sections so I can see what the general public is also saying. Do they agree or do they disagree? And I saw a lot of the words or the letters DEI casting in the comment sections. While the official reviews were pretty good about this show, most of the commentary, again, right when the show was coming out a few weeks back, there were a lot of commentary from audience members, like people who are normal people in the comment sections, saying things like the show wasn't good, saying things like DEI casting, saying that they're just ripping off the movie and changing the races of the characters. So it made me want to look into all of that commentary. And when I started looking, I realized a lot about the people in these comment sections. First, these people don't really know what they're talking about. And the reason why I say that is because their instant connection to Mr. and Mrs. Smith is the Brad Pitt Angelina Jolie film from like 2006. This show does not follow that movie. There's actually a Mr. and Mrs. Smith television show that came out in the 1990s starring Scott Bakula, Mr. Quantum Leap himself. And this show follows that show. So that's one point against all the different comment sections that I read before actually watching the show. Then I took it upon myself to actually look into what does DEI even mean, because it's not a phrase or a set of letters that I've ever heard used in my personal life. Like in my job, I never hear people say that. I never knew where that phrase came from. I just seen it flying around a lot, specifically with this show. So I look into it and I find out that DEI stands for diversity, equality, and inclusion. And then I realized that I've been reading the comments of a bunch of idiots, a bunch of people who don't know nothing and probably never even watched the show. But they're passing judgment because their only connection to the property are the two white leads. And now they're seeing an Asian and a black lead and they don't like it. Now, with those thoughts that I read, I just basically took all of the comments that I read that criticized the show and I threw them out. And then I watched the show. So let's talk about the actual show. The show is massively directed and acted and produced. It's a pretty damn good show. Honestly, I think it has potential to go down as probably one of the better shows that I'm going to look at throughout this year of 2024. The most important or impressive thing that I want to talk about when it comes to this show is the direction. So, even though each episode has different directors, I think there's at least 4 to 6 different directors that try their hand at doing an episode of this show. One thing is consistent. There was a vision for these characters and how these characters would develop. And we see it quite clearly with the performance of Maya Erskine. So within the first 2 episodes, I really felt like she's a cagey character. And I don't like it because these characters are developing a chemistry and it feels incredibly one-sided. It feels as though Donald Glover's character is very much into his Jane. And I just don't see the love, the warmth, the connection from her back towards her John. It really bugged me in the beginning of the show, but it didn't deter me from watching it. I thought that the show was still coming together quite well. But as you get to the middle part and then to the end of the season, that characterization of Maya Erskine's Jane, you really get to see it become a focal point of the show. And even though you have different directors, they all were consistent in making sure she gave this really cold, really awkward, but still into you type performance. And I didn't necessarily think that they would be doing that and it would become a focal point of the show, but I'm very glad that it did. And honestly, the way this season ended, it gives Maya Erskine's Jane, that character, the potential to grow exponentially and really play things differently if they decide to do multiple seasons of this thing moving forward. While I will say that the ending of this season was ambiguous and I didn't necessarily love it in the moment, after giving it a few days to like let it cool off and think about the way it played out in my mind, I'm actually quite happy with the way they left things. This is a bit of a spoiler if you haven't watched the show, but I do want to kind of go into detail here. I don't think that me saying this will deter anyone from watching the show or spoil or ruin anything for it because you have zero context of this line that I'm about to say. But the way the show ends is you see these three flashes of light implying three gunshots. Now we know our main characters, if you were watching, our main characters only had one bullet left. And so there's no resolution as to what happens to them. But to me, it just opens up so much possibility for what could happen in another season if they decide to do one. We could come into this next season following only Jane because John didn't survive. Vice versa, we can go into the next season following John because Jane didn't survive. They could do a situation where there was some sort of a tussle, weapons got exchanged, and you see the gunshots, and both John and Jane survive. Then we get to see them, expand upon their adventures, or both of them could have died, and we could get an anthology style season 2 with a whole nother John, a whole nother Jane, and their ride from doing well to falling off. Even when we talk about the real detailed stuff, they could show us exactly what happened, or they could just imply what happened through conversation. Whether we get John and Jane, or just John or Jane, there's so many different things that they could do with this show based on the way that last scene played out. And here's even another thought. What if we don't even get a season 2? I actually feel like they should get a season 2. I think that the show is deserving of a longer run, and let's see some more from these characters, and let's see them maybe together and in conflict with their company, because it's obvious that their company wanted them to be at conflict with each other towards the end of the season. So I want to see more. I think it's deserving, but at the same time, what if we don't? That ending, the way they did it, leaves you with the idea that you could like create any kind of fantasy in your mind as to what happened with these characters. They could be living happily ever after, or they both could have gotten taken out. So I like that it was left ambiguous in that way, and I'm just waiting to hear about an announcement of another season because I very much would like to see that. But if it gets canceled, this is a satisfying ending as well. I enjoyed this season. It made pretty damn good TV, but of course, let me know your thoughts in the comment section if you choose to do so. And that's all we have for this one, y'all. Enjoy yourself, guard your heart, and go watch something good.